And I genuinely believe everyone can be better. It isn't circumstance and situation, it's about choice. Anything and everything can flourish, but for us, it's a matter of getting out of our own way, stopping interference, allowing us to almost freewheel into success.
What if your team wasn't just good, they were exceptional? And what if the key to success wasn't about what you know, it was about creating the connections that others don't see? Today I'm joined by Jamil Qureshi, one of the world's most sought-after performance psychologists. He's worked with elite athletes, billion-dollar business leaders, and global brands, helping them to rewire the way they think, act, and perform.
Best thing that I've ever had in my favour as a golf psychologist was I've never picked up a golf club in my life. People are born without love, without care. Some of those people have still become the most successful people who have ever walked this earth. So it almost proves beyond doubt that attitude is more important than intelligence or facts. A lot of people where they believe they can be is a lot lower than where they could be.
This isn't just about performing at a higher level, it's about unlocking the version of you that's already waiting for you. Potential is nothing without action. It's time to step up.
No one has ever wandered around the bottom of a mountain and then simply found themselves at the top. If you genuinely want to achieve anything more than what you're achieving at the moment, it's about making a choice, taking the responsibility, having the ownership to create a mindset and attitude which allows you to move from where you are to where you want to be.
This episode is sponsored by Vested. Vested is the leading share tech platform because companies that share stakes share success. Let's do this.
So my vision of hell is you die and the first person you meet is the person you could have been.
ActionCOACH, the help you need to grow your business. What is performance psychology?
What is performance psychology? I think it probably means lots of things to lots of people. For me, it's about optimizing potential. So I think everyone can perform better. So if you took, the best performers in the world, I think they could do even more than what they're doing. And performance psychology is all about how do we get the most out of ourselves? How do we optimize our potential? How do we, realize our own talents and make them work for us in a way which is reflective of how we're made as human beings. So, and what I mean by that is that success is abundant in nature. So if you have a look at everything in nature is successful. So trees, plants, that how tall does a tree grow? It grows to its optimum height, and that's what it does. Nothing restricts it. There's no relationship it had with its brother that restricts it, or anything to do with its childhood. So nature grows to its optimum. It's successful, and we are nature's crowning glory. So therefore, we have the ability to be abundantly successful. What holds us back, is our own thoughts, our own ideas. So therefore, we interfere with our ability to be successful. So if we take our lesson from what we see around us, then I'm talking about the environment, that anything and everything can flourish. But for us, it's a matter of getting out of our own way, stopping interference, allowing us to almost freewheel into success.
I don't know who came up with this quote, but it's one that stood the test of time with me. Nature only grows when the environment is favourable.
Right.
Okay, so even the tree, in an unfavourable environment, it'll grow to where it can.
Yes.
But you take an iceberg out of the Arctic and you put it in the Sahara Desert, it's melting. So
yes.
What we're around also helps us grow.
It does. However, and it's a really interesting argument, this, isn't it? Because you're absolutely right. If you have the right environment, it's almost easier to flourish. Having said that, I've seen people flourish in environments which, are not conducive to success. If you, have a look at people who are born with a physical disadvantage, people are born without love, without care, without guidance, without support, without opportunity or money. Some of those people have still become the most successful people who have ever walked this earth. So it almost proves beyond doubt that attitude is more important than intelligence or facts or environment. Don't get me wrong, you're absolutely right. That if you are surrounded by people or things which can accelerate or catalyze your success, I totally agree. but I still think it's possible for everyone to realise their potential.
Have you read The Talent Code, Daniel Coyle?
I think it's one of those books that sits on my shelf.
Yeah, he talks about some really good stuff in there. I mean, it's research based, physiology as well. He talks about myelinating the mind.
Yes, I remember it now. Now you said that, yeah. That's yeah, I do remember.
Basically, wrapping myelin sheaths around neural pathways in your mind.
Yeah.
And
he argues it's not the 10,000 hours of practice; it's the myelinated sheath, isn't it?
He does argue that, but that's not the reason I'm bringing him up. The reason I'm bringing him up is because of unfavourable environments.
Yeah.
You know, there's places in Russia that it snows best part of half of the year. It's freezing. There's a tennis court. They've got 2 tennis courts. It's the worst kind of tennis court environment that you can ever imagine. Yet, year after year, they turn out top 10 in the world tennis players.
Yeah.
And he calls this pockets of brilliance and pockets of... There is an environment of coaching around them. There is an environment and history of people that have been there and done it. And of course, it leans into the myelinating the mind through focused work.
Yeah. And there are these pockets. I remember it now. You said that. I think he talks about like, is it a music class where, where these world-class singers come from.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an interesting one because I think a couple of things on this. That I think that, environment is obviously helping. Yeah. You're surrounded by people who are good at coaching. You're surrounded by people who are talented. That helps. But I think for every one of those, there are people who still do well despite their circumstances and situation. So, let's go back to the original question. I agree with you that environment absolutely helps. Of course it does. Is it possible, to realise your own potential, to maximise, your own assets in an environment which is not conducive to do so? I believe it is. And, the reason why is because of the mindset or attitude that you create to allow that to take place. I think, if you think about it, I think the best practice arena in the world is our own minds. The amount of people who I've worked with who are Premiership footballers, top 10 in the world golfers, and they couldn't practice at a knee injury, shoulder injury, can't practice. And I've allowed them to visualize at what success looks like, practice in your mind. And that way you can replay, you can fast forward, you can go backwards, you can stop, you can pause and do what you like. And it's been successful for them. And I think that once you practice and use your imagination and use your ability to visualize and create opportunities which allow you to physically realize them, I think it's possible to maximize your talent. There's a story, I wish I could remember his name, I can't remember it now. And there was a prisoner of war, I'll find out for you, but there was a prisoner of war in the Korean War. There was a American soldier, and he was held captive for 3 years. One of the reasons why he managed to keep a sanity in the solitary confinement that he was mainly kept in was he used to play his home course, which is Pinehurst in North Carolina. And so he used to play the course in his mind. And so he'd replace the divots. He would do what he would do on on this Saturday morning when he'd play. And eventually was released from his prison. And when he went back, he played the course that he was used to playing, his home course, and he played it to scratch, having not picked up a golf club in 3 years, because he would just practice on a daily basis in his mind.
Reminds me of, obviously, the famous Jack Nicklaus. I go to the movies before every shot. I go to the movies the night before, sitting on his chair and visualising every hole. It's quite impressive, that, isn't it? This is a Korean story in sport. Korean and Asia are very good at sport, badminton.
Yes.
There was a guy called Kim Dong-moon. Before the Olympics, he in the year of the Olympics, they started the Olympic season, first qualifying tournament for ranking points, and he lost in second or third round, but he should have won. So I've been told this story, and I want to believe it's true.
Go on.
Right, so apparently he got sent to the mountains in Korea. This is how it is in Korea,
yeah?
He got sent to the mountains to have a word with himself.
Yeah.
For 5 weeks. living in a shed, some kind of like picture, whatever you're putting in your mind right now. You know, his food was in there, but he's got no contact with anyone else for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Look, this is your season. This is you to be crowned Olympic champion. And they sent him in there 5 weeks. Came out 5 weeks later. So he was only allowed himself his own thoughts.
Yeah.
He could run up and down the mountain, whatever physical exercise he did. Following that 5 weeks, he won 15 Grand Slam tournaments in a row.
Right.
Qualified himself as world ranked number 1. Didn't drop one game. You know, like in tennis, you've got best of 5 sets. He didn't drop one set.
Yeah.
For 15 tournaments in a row.
Right.
And all that had changed is that 5 weeks in there.
Yeah.
He almost like he didn't make a mistake afterwards.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you what my initial thought is that I've got young twins at home. So I might say to my wife, I need 5 weeks in isolation so I can perform better. That was my immediate thought.
Well, just a second. Wait. We're not going further than that for a second. I've got young twins at home as well. And it's our wives that need to be saying to us, I need 5 weeks in it, not us.
I'll give you that.
We've got the easy life.
It is true.
Right.
That's absolutely true.
So,
I think that I mean, there's nothing better than self-awareness and introspection. So I find the most successful people I've ever worked with in my entire life have great self-awareness. They're really good at it. And they absolutely know.
What does really good at it mean?
They know when they've had a good game. They know when they've had a bad game. They know what the component parts of performing well are. So when you play well, so let's say that you play golf. Let's say that you are a salesperson.
Yeah.
So when you have a great few weeks, it is not a purple patch. It's not good form. It's not a lucky streak. It's how you can play all the time. So the majority of the time, we are being interfered with, that word again, that something's getting in the way. Something is stopping our thinking or interfering with our thinking to interfere with how we do things. So, and I think that the most successful people, and I hate to name drop here, but I remember speaking to Arsene Wenger about this. Sir John Mills once said to me, you must never name drop. But on this occasion I will. Arsene Wenger said the one thing that he looks for in players is self-awareness. At
what age?
So I don't know. I didn't ask him that, but self-awareness. And I used to work with people. I'll tell you, Stevie Warnock, who used to play for Liverpool. He played for Blackburn Rovers. Great footballer. He used to have great self-awareness. So you'd come in and you'd say to him, how do you play today? And he said, I played great because I did this. I played bad because I did that. And he was absolutely right. And then there were some players that you speak to, and they'd say, I had a great game today. We lost 3-0, but it's because of the rest of the team. And you just think, you played rubbish. I tell him, why can't you see that? And
is that denial?
Well, I think that, if we go back to your example, I think that 5 weeks in isolation allows people to understand who they are in the context of their job. So I think being a good salesperson, being a good leader, being a good tennis player is not seeking to impress, it's seeking to express and be ourselves in the context of our workplace. And I think if you have 5 weeks in isolation, and if you get to know who you are in the context of your game. I worked with Lee Westwood, and Lee Westwood went through a patch of winning everything. Then he went through a patch of not winning anything, and then he went through a patch of winning everything. And one of the things that that when you work with players who are that good, it's not about trying to teach them how to putt better. I can't play golf. I've never played in my entire life. I can't teach anyone anything about golf. But if they get a perspective on what golf means to them and their family and their career, who they are in the context of the vehicle they use, whether you're CEO of a telecoms company or whether you're a golfer, then I think that you might choose to use your skill sets differently. So improvement isn't about giving people more skills. It's about allowing them a different perspective so they can choose to use their skills in a different way. That to me is improvement.
This episode is sponsored by Vested. Vested is the leading share tech platform. What does that mean? It means we make share schemes and funding rounds a dream. So if you're rewarding your team or raising finance, Vested can help you retain, recruit, and raise funds with ease. Because companies that share stakes share success. For more information, search Vested without the second E. Now back to the podcast.
Look, I have heard stories of various CEOs and business leaders going on retreats and Buddhist retreats with what's he called? His name Tak Nin Han or some Tak Nin Han.
Okay.
Yeah, the Plum Village. So I've heard stories where you're literally in silence for 3 or 4 days or a week, and literally you just coming to terms with yourself and thinking. And
Could you do that or not?
I'd like to do it.
I'd like to do it.
Yeah,
I'd like to
I
try.
think it would be a good experience.
It'd be really hard. I might sneak in the odd word when going to bed. Just to myself.
What, are we going together? Are we going together? Right. If we're if we're going together, it would be really hard.
I think if you and I were sharing a bedroom, I think we'd be chatting away.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't. But no, I think if I was lying alone in a single bed in some monastery somewhere, I think I'd have to utter something to myself. I don't know what. But I feel like I would. I'd whisper it in case someone was walking past. That's all. You look under the door where you get the crack of light and you see someone's feet go past.
Maybe
be
you
quiet.
could like whisper something like and spook them a little. Underneath the door. Look, you've said a number of times in interference. So Tim Galway, he had the model. Performance is potential minus interference.
Yeah.
What's potential?
Oh God! You said you were going to ask easy questions today.
Yeah, I've got some.
I think that success is all about the continued accomplishment of goals which are personal to the individual. So the problem that people have with success is they always do it as a comparison. So, you know, you compare yourself to your next door neighbour. You compare yourself to someone you work with in the office, someone in the sales team, you know, someone you went to school with. But it's all about the realisation of goals which are personal to you. So, and it's a continued accomplishment of it because, you know, success isn't this destination. Yeah. And I think the most successful people I've ever worked with, you know, these people who get the number one in the world in their sport, you know, are incredibly purposeful. And purpose is never achieved, it's attained on a daily basis. So the mistake that people make is that they think that I've got a purpose, I want to achieve this. But that's a goal or a target.
Yeah,
So purpose is a reason for being. It's a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And the reason why Tiger Woods keeps working, the reason why Warren Buffett keeps working, you know, is because they're fulfilled on a daily basis. And I think that, I think that in regard to realising potential, you know, it's about finding something which is meaningful to the individual, and then the continued accomplishment of, of completing upon that or being part of that on a regular basis. Right. Do you know what I mean? I think it's just like, you know, so I get huge amount of pleasure out of understanding what people do and helping them to do it better. I'm not a banker. I'm not a golfer. You know, I work with bankers and I work with golfers. You know, and I get great pleasure out of giving them some content which stimulates, provokes, you know, allows them to think about their world differently. And then they might choose to use some of those ideas, philosophies, thinking, psychology, you know, and translate it into their business to be better. You know, so, my whole reason for being is to allow people to be better, you know, whatever that means to them. And so I think that, realizing potential is finding something that fulfills you because it's what you believe in, it's what you're about, and being able to express that on a daily basis.
I researched that question as well. I found some really good stuff. You know, there's one guy, I think he was called John Acuff. He said, your potential is the gap between your vision and your reality.
Yeah, do you know what? I'll give you something on this. And I'm sharing a lot with you today. So I remember working with a golfer who won the Masters. So I was working with this golfer who won the Masters, and you wouldn't put them down to win the Masters, to be honest. Really talented, incredibly talented, but ended up winning one of the biggest tournaments in golf, and of course we drank that night. So and there's about 4 or 5 of us who were drinking that night, and we talked about life, talked about one of the things you do when you had a few to drink. Talk about life, talk about purpose and whatever else. And he said my vision of hell is my vision of hell is that you die, and wherever you go, and the first person you meet is the person you could have been. And so he comes up with this this quote, this thinking, and in a way that describes potential, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Well, that's where you want to look. Your vision is where you want to be, but then you've got the science behind. If you believe it, you can conceive it, type thing. Napoleon Hill stuff.
Yeah, you got to think it to be able to do it.
Is your potential the gap between where you believe you can be and where you are right now? Because if you don't believe you're going to be there, the vision's not going to happen anyway.
You know what? I mean, I don't want to be too depressing on this, but a lot of people where they believe they can be is a lot lower than where they could be.
Right.
So what do we do about that? And I think
what should we do about that right now? If you had a magic cure for the world,
yes,
one magic cure,
yeah, okay,
what would you cure?
I'm quite political, so it's not a great question.
Yeah,
to ask me.
Right. No politics.
So, no
politics allowed.
So I think that I think that we have been given an imagination, to allow us to create everything that we've created. So if you think about, the world, if you think about, renewable energy systems, open source drug discovery, and you think about, skyscrapers, and you think about everything that we've, imagined and then created. The reason why we have imagination is to allow us to become better. That's what it's about. And if you were ill now, and your body would be fighting it. So no matter what you thought, if you were ill, your body would be fighting it. We don't self-sabotage. So, the chemicals in your body will be fighting the illness.
We don't self-sabotage physically.
No, but what I was going to say is that, I'm going to come on to that actually, because that's a big question now you've asked. So we don't self-sabotage physically. And so, we'll try and fight the illness inside us, no matter what. So I think our imagination is to make us better. So we have, as human beings, what we've developed and created, the world that we've created, is because people have been able to imagine it and think it. And so therefore, our imagination, I believe, is there for good, is there to create, make us better, and to make us do things that we haven't done before. Unfortunately, it's because we don't come with a manual. There's no instruction booklet. And I think that we've used our imagination to hinder us, to inhibit, to create barriers.
Doubts.
Yeah. So, what I would do if you were to, say to me that, what would I do to change the world? I would allow people to imagine optimistically and positively the world that we could inhabit. So, and that's not just the billionaires, without getting political. It's every single one of us. Because our potential is not about what we think we can imagine, it's what we can truly what we imagine. It's what we can truly achieve, And I think that if you opened up the world to the possibilities of what everyone could achieve, I think it would be different. Now, hear me out. We were talking about Paul McGinley before this, and when people have negative self-talk. So when people say, I'm going to present and it puts me off because I think I'm going to forget my words, or I'm going to trip up, or people won't like it. Or people are playing golf and they say, don't hit it left. Don't leave it short over a putt. I think that our imagination is there to help us. It's the translation or interpretation which is the issue. So, when Paul McGinley hit the winning putt, and I can't remember when, 2005, 2006 in the Ryder Cup, it was over a 6-foot putt. Now, most 6-foot putts don't get in, so the majority don't get in. But he stood over the putt, this is useful if you work in sales. It's useful if you're a leader. So this works a business and it works a sport. So standing over the putt, he heard, "Don't pull it left, don't drop it short, don't hit it past." So all this negative self-talk. And now you can either say at that point, "Why am I hearing this? And this is the last thing I need. How can I perform when?" So you can either say that and tense up, or you can say, "This is really good advice, actually. I'm going to listen to my negative self-talk and I'm going to translate it as the adult that I am now, with all my wisdom, experience and expertise, into something which allows me to perform." So he heard, "Don't pull it left." That's really good advice. Thank you. I'll pick my spot at the back of the cup. That's what he used to do, the back of the hole. And I'll do that. And don't leave it short. Great advice. Commit to the stroke. Execute upon it. Don't dilly-dally. Don't be half-hearted. Commit to this. So he actually used his negative self-talk for a reason to be successful. And whatever negative self-talk anyone hears, don't accept it verbatim. It's like listening to a 5-year-old. It's on your side, but it's used in the wrong words. That's why we don't self-sabotage, even in our mindset. We need to translate it. So if you were in the egg and spoon race at school on Parents' Day, your children might say to you, "Don't drop it, Daddy. Don't trip up. Yeah. Don't lose." Now, you wouldn't say to them, "Why on earth are you saying this? I can't perform when you're saying it." No, you wouldn't. You would say, "Do you know what? That's really good advice. And I'm going to take it steady and I'm going to do my best. And if I do drop it, it doesn't matter."
All the parents listening are questioning themselves now. Would I honestly respond like that?
But you know what? It's funny because I worked with Thomas Bjorn, that Danish golfer, and I remember him missing a short putt in practice. And the expletives he used about himself, and how "I can't play, I'm crap at this, and this is dreadful, I'm rubbish," and all of that sort of stuff. And I said to him, "You're fine." He's got twins actually, and so he had a 5-year-old twin at the time. I said, if your 5-year-old was playing and missed that putt, what would you say?" And he said, "Don't worry about it. Even Daddy misses those. It's all right." Okay, so why can't we talk to ourselves in that way? Because if he talked to his 5-year-old in the way he just talked to himself, his 5-year-old would never pick up a golf club again.
No.
Never.
And he would probably be disgusted with himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Afterwards.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you and I know a lot about mindset and attitude, but how many times have we done it where we feel bad about something we haven't done and compound it by feeling bad about feeling bad. I was late here today by half an hour, and I said to you, "I'm so stressed by this. This is an awful morning this morning." So I'm late by half an hour. And so you either feel bad about feeling bad about this, which doubles your badness, in your own mind. Or alternatively, it's one of those things which happens, and if I was the best golfer in the world, if I was the best CEO in the world, would I be late for meetings? I would be, so, in a way that, we almost need to be more accepting. And when we hear ourselves, it's not necessarily about believing what we say to be true. Our internal dialogue, when you're sat on a plane, when you're over a putt, when you're taking a penalty, when you're going into a really important sales pitch, your internal dialogue is a 5-year-old. But it's a 5-year-old that's on your side, so it's using the wrong words.
Love the analogy of 5-year-old on your side. By the way, how old are your twins?
8-year-old twin girls. That's why I look like this. I'm only 25. So 8-year-old twin girls and a 13-year-old boy.
Do you want them to be intelligent?
Do I want them to be intelligent? No. Well, do you know what? It's funny actually because they're really, really clever. They're really clever. And do you know what? In answer to your question, I really worry about that because
right.
I think cleverness is not the answer these days at all.
Well, let me just finish that off because you mentioned imagination, and this quote comes from Albert Einstein of all people.
Oh yeah, they all do.
Yeah. Measure what matters. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he says, if you want your children to be successful,
yeah,
read them fairy tales.
Totally agree.
And then he says this: if you want your children to be even more, I'm changing the word intelligent to successful. So intelligent or success, even more, read them more fairy tales.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
I live and breathe by that every single night.
Yeah.
I read my children fairy tales. I make them up about them. Imagination.
Yeah, honestly, it's the key, isn't it? So, think about where we are at the moment. That the world is so undefined. So, what is going to allow you to be successful in the next 12 months? I don't believe it's knowing more. It's knowing differently. And the people who are incredibly successful, are the people who make connections that other people aren't making. So, it's the divergent thinkers. So the more that we can encourage people to think divergently, the better.
Which means open things out by
Yeah. So
instead of closing it down and
make
instant
really
decisions,
odd connections. The thing is that when we're children, we make really odd connections. So it's amazing what kids say. They'll, I took the children to Lapland at Christmas, and I said, are we getting a plane? Yeah, it's Lapland. It's like, so it's in this country. No, it's not in this country. And it's all the connections that they're, and they start making these really odd connections about things. So, do elves eat acorns? And yeah. Anyway, so
starting your own business was an exciting time, wasn't it? The good days you had, and the bad. You knew you'd have to work hard, but you did it for your future. Lately, though, you're missing out on the important things in life. Time seems to be slipping by. So make the change. Claim back your work-life balance and grow your business today. Visit actioncoach.co.uk.
But it's really, really odd connections, but it's great. Now what happens is that we start to make, and we go from divergent to convergent. So the reason why people get to CEO is because of their ability to understand why market share is down. So we need to do this. Revenue is down. I know we need to do that. And so they start making these connections where people get promoted and businesses improve. But the most successful people on the planet at the moment are the people who are not making the obvious connections. The reason why Airbnb, Uber, and all the obvious examples, where these come from is people are making connections other people wouldn't make. If someone suggested to you in a pub over a glass of Macallan's that I'm thinking about something called Uber. I'm thinking about Airbnb actually. And do you want to stick a tenner in? And you're smarter than me. And so maybe you'd say yes. I wouldn't. I'd say no because it's ridiculous. I got a friend of mine actually. A friend of mine who's in a fortune in America investing in startups. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars invested in startups. And I said to him at Christmas, I said that, would you invest in a startup again? He said, I don't know. He said that if you gave me a business plan, which is the most ridiculous plan I've ever seen, total stupidity, I'd probably take a look. He said, if it had any sense whatsoever, I wouldn't bother. And, because someone else is already doing it. So, I think that, our ability to make connections that other people aren't making, is probably where our success lies. So, and this is why, I always say that the immigrant will always see things that the citizen is blind to. And if you're in finance and you want to make some great strides in finance, then move away from being a financial expert. If you're in law and you want to make some great strides to your business in law, move away from thinking about law. Because we need to think like an outsider. Combining your two questions, where you said that, do I want my kids to be intelligent? And I said, probably not. That is my answer, probably not. Is that, I actually think that, success will come not necessarily from, being clever and knowing a lot. It will come from being open-minded and curious and challenging and experimental and being able to make different connections that people who have technical expertise won't necessarily be able to make. When you get kids who are total superstars, these kids who do their A levels age 12, Do you know what I mean? It's proper like I'm talking about,
yeah.
these weird
Yeah.
kids. And who
They're doing like spelling
Yeah.
tests on TV at
yeah,
age
yeah.
8.
They're like 5,
Yeah.
and can spell these
Yeah.
words and do these can factorize quadratic equations age 4. It's just amazing. And these kids go on to be really good doctors, or they go on to be really good lawyers. They don't go on to change law. They don't go on to change medicine. And so you can almost say that their intelligence allows them to be successful in an area of technical expertise. It doesn't allow them to be changed in a world in which you would suggest that level of intelligence would. It comes back to our first question. I mean, the vast majority of things on this earth are not intelligent, which are successful, are not intelligent. And plants, and trees. Look in the White House.
Yet we're the crowning glory, as you put it earlier on. The Latin word for education is educare. Educare doesn't mean to put things in; it means to draw out. It means to make connections.
Right.
When you learn one thing and connect it to something else, that's what when learning starts to happen.
I always learn something speaking to you. I should write this down. I should be taking notes.
But what you did say is making unobvious connections is what success really is.
Yeah.
The unobvious ones. There's a book called Made to Stick, and you don't need to read the book when I tell you the principle in a second. It says if you want something to stick, it's got to be 10 times better than what exists, essentially. Really good book. Makes the point really well throughout the whole book. If it's not 10 times better than what exists right now, it's not going to stick.
Yeah.
And I kind of had that thinking when you talked about unobvious. You've got to think bigger. You've got to think outside the box. You've got to get out of this. It's actually, how can we amplify that? And then you start to realize the connections from thinking bigger.
Do you know what? I think that one of the advantages at the moment, and we talked about environment for success, is that I think war makes strange bedfellows. So if you look at the moment, war for talent, you look at, economies not being where people want them to be, markets not being where they want them to be. I think we need to think outside of what we already know. So the answer is never to pedal faster. So I think if you are a car manufacturer, if you're a bank, if you're a utility, I think the more that you can think about connections that have never been made before, the more chance you have of being successful. So, if you look at, smart cars, Mercedes and Swatch watches, the more that you can make really odd connections. And if you're running a small business at the moment, and let's say that you're in, a state agency, who can you partner with that you would never think you'd partner with? And car wash place down the road, is it a solicitors would be too obvious. Is it a laundry on the corner of the road? I don't know. But the more that we can make really odd connections and think, how would that fit together? 9 times out of 10, they won't.
Well, you might have some other ideas in the process.
Exactly right. Yeah. So and ideas are networks. The best way of having a great idea, the best opportunity of having a great idea, is to have lots of ideas. So just have lots of ideas and explore them, and continue to do that, because at some stage you'll make a connection, which you think, what? No one else is doing that.
I learned from Tim Ferriss. He had a book called Tools for Titans, and perfectionists close off ideas really fast.
Yeah.
And say, come up with an idea for this, and like, there aren't any. They're instantly cancelling it out.
Yeah.
So then Tim says, no. He says the best thing you can do if someone can't come up with one idea is say, come up with 5.
Yeah.
And then if they can't come up with any because you've asked for 5, just say, don't come up with 5, come up with 10.
Yeah.
And then if they're struggling, say, Jamil, come up with 20 ideas. Literally, I want you 20 ideas on the subject. I'm going to go get a cup of tea and you come up with 20 ideas. And only at this point, you'll start to accept, well, most of my ideas are going to be crap.
Yeah.
And it says that's the point where you've unlocked the freeze, the blockage because he uses this phrase: the brain doesn't differentiate. The brain differentiates between perfect and imperfect, but it doesn't really differentiate between a little bit imperfect and a lot imperfect, and that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah, I think the interesting thing as well is that new ideas are incredibly fragile. They're amazingly fragile. I've sat in boardrooms before, and you must see it too with the coaching that you do. You sat in a boardroom before, and someone's come up with a new idea, and it's being killed by a smirk. It's being killed by a raised eyebrow. Yeah, folded the arms. But,
It's so true,
it's
isn't it?
unbelievable how fragile new ideas are. It doesn't take much for the most senior person in the room to go like that. It's over.
Yeah.
It's literally over. And so so I think the more ideas we can have, the more that we can enable and build upon ideas.
What would be the best response? Let's just play this fake fictional analogy out, because what you just said is very common.
Yeah.
Someone raises the eyebrow like that, and I've come up with the idea, and I think, yeah, that was a waste of time. I'm feeling insecure now.
I've apologised for this, by the way. I don't know why you're bringing it up now. I know I poo-poo most of your new ideas, but
let's say we do come up with an idea, and someone says that. What would be the best response?
Yeah.
Someone's crossed their arms off. Just they've done as you've said.
Yeah, I think that I think my friend Tim Reed, who's a creativity expert, he always says that the best way of having these meetings is to separate the way in which we discuss a new idea. So usually when we say we have a brainstorm, and what happens is people get in a room, come up with some ideas, and people immediately, either build upon them or disable them. That won't work because. But he talks about spending the first part of the session where you're only allowed to enable ideas. That's the only thing you're allowed. So no one is allowed to come up with a reason why it won't work.
You're not allowed. It's bad.
All you do. We've got an hour's meeting. So James got an hour's meeting, and we're going to discuss some new sales channels. That's what we're going to do. I've got some ideas. We're going to throw some ideas around. So we've got an hour. First 20 minutes, I would like everyone to build upon the ideas. You are only allowed to make them better. That's all. So suspend judgment. So suspend judgment at how would it work? So even if you don't believe it's going to work, how would you make it work? And so let's spend the first 20 minutes doing that. Then afterwards, what we can do is then we can get reductive. So let's start to reduce the ideas. Let's start to think about why it won't work. But instead of throw in, things which are, building on the idea, expansive, and some which are reductive, and we have this conversation based upon politics and people, we're only allowed to, split it into two parts, basically. And that's quite a nice way of working. And I think that what I would do is I was positioning a new idea. And it's a bit crass because I think there's a few other things that I would do too to make these new ideas land. But if we were just talking about, throwing out a new idea and someone dismissing it, I would say that, can we just spend sort of 5 minutes or so at where, we allow this to take shape? If we were, whether you believe it or not, can we just build upon it? How would it work? It's really funny, actually, because, again, when I worked with Thomas Bjorn, so I remember in Qatar, he was hitting the ball not very well at all. And my advantage, the best thing that I ever had, in my favour as a golf psychologist was I'd never picked up a golf club in my life. So, coaching the best golfers in the world, I'd never hit a ball. So I remember Thomas hitting it, quite badly. And so he was very, very unhappy. And so I came over to him and said, what are you working on, Thomas? So, of course, the usual amount of expletives and whatever. And he said, I'm trying to hit the ball. So I'm trying to, I said, well, what do you mean? He said, I'm trying to hit the ball like Sevi. And he said, Sevi's got this fade. I don't know what a fade is. What's a fade? What is it? He said, when you start the ball here and it goes over there, I can't imagine it. And it's like this. And hits it. And so, okay, I get it. And so it goes from here to there. He said, yeah. So show me again. Hits it. And we had this conversation over the course of about half an hour or so where I said to him that, I've never seen Sevi play. I don't understand anything about golf. How does Sevi hit it? And he sort of hits it like this. hits it. Beautiful. And so what he's doing is now getting into this way of working because of the how stupid and how thick I am about golf.
Or
so
how you played your part in it. You know? Was there a bit of acting there? I mean, you
oh well, yes, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was acting. Yes, I mean, all I did was try to nullify, the situation. This situation was getting quite emotional, and about I don't know how's it work. I've got no idea. And so show me that. But isn't it a bit like this? And show me. Yeah. And in a way, with new ideas, with coming up with new things. That ability to not think like an expert. This will work because, and in fact, quite the opposite. If we were going to make this work, I know this is I know it sounds like a bad idea to you, but can we just for a few minutes that if there was any opportunity of it working, how would you make it work, or how would we make it work? I know we're not going to do it. I know that it's not a great. We don't have the budget. I know we won't have the time. But if we did. And that if we did is a really nice way of working with people.
Takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, if you could see it working, how would you do it?
Yeah, where you just leave a little bit of flexibility in the question. Even might.
Yeah.
What might you be able to do?
Yeah, I mean, you must do it as a coach with people.
Yeah.
Is that that
language?
I know that you can't see this working at the moment, but if it worked, what would you have to do? Yeah. And I think that once people start to enter, there's a friend of mine actually who helps people give up smoking. And the first question he asks them is that, can you imagine life without smoking? And if they say no, I think this is going to be bloody hard work. If they said yes, he's already broken the belief system. So
that probably, question, that probably goes for anything that you want to achieve, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Totally agree.
I want to get physically strong.
Yeah.
Can you imagine life when you're physically strong?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a really good starting point,
Just
isn't it?
breaking the belief system. Yeah. Can you imagine life without cigarettes? Can you imagine not drinking? Can you imagine, running a business which was twice as successful? And this bit about, we talked about what potential is. Yeah, maybe there's not enough people who ask that question about, if I was charging 5 times more than I charge at the moment, what would life look like? How would I make it work? If I was, managing 3 people instead of running my own business, what would they be doing? How would I be making money? And, if I had clients which were like this instead of like that, how would I get them? So maybe those playing the game of what if is a really interesting way to explore and expand upon, our current place.
Let's reverse it. Interference. Does imagination remove interference, or are there any other ways? Because interference is normal, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's incredibly normal. We are hardwired not to fail. So you're if you look at evolutionary psychology, you are not wired for happiness. You're not wired for fulfilling your ambitions. You're wired to not die. So it's basically about avoiding things that could be harmful, which overrides our ability to be happy. When you think about your ancestors at 2,000-3,000 years ago, at 200,000 years ago, that it wasn't about fulfillment. It was about not getting eaten, not dying. So I think that, and this is where this bit about loss. I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose my life. I don't want to lose money. I don't want to lose, status, credibility, trust. I don't want to lose really strong emotions.
If you're an ambitious business owner eager to unlock the next level of growth, then the UK's biggest business event is the place you need to be to grow your business.
Hi, I am Rachel Riley, and I'm really pleased to tell you that I will be the host of BizX 2025. 3 days of speaker sessions, interactive events, and a few surprises along the way, so you are not going to want to miss it.
The event You Need to Grow Your Business is happening from the 2nd to the 4th of April in Farnborough. Tickets won't be available for long. Get more information by registering your interest at thebizx.co.uk. BizX 2025, where ambition meets action.
So, I think that I think a good way to step out of that is gamification. And it comes back to what if, basically, is that once we start to get motivated by what we're seeking to create and achieve, I spoke about this at BizX, actually. Once we start to get motivated about what we're seeking to achieve and create rather than what we're seeking to avoid, two things. One, it can be much more exciting and expansive, and ambitious.
Yeah.
But it's also not a place of fear. So when I've worked with players who in sport who have been motivated by what they're seeking to avoid, I don't want to lose. Two things have happened. They've either operated in a climate of fear, or they've been drawn towards that dominant thought. So if you say, I'm not a smoker, I'm not a smoker, I don't want to lose, I don't want to lose, I don't want to lose this relationship, you're more likely for it to happen. We're actually heading towards it. It's negative goal setting. And if you're measuring yourself by what you're seeking to achieve and create, it's an expansive, ambitious, good place to be in. So when people have been motivated by what they're seeking to avoid, they've operated in a climate of fear. I don't want to lose where I am at the moment. And they've actually headed towards it anyway, because it's negative goal setting. So, I think that once we start to gamify, play some games about what could be, what if, imagine and tell ourselves some stories about the possibilities, not the probabilities, but the possibilities. Once we start to see other people, who have achieved things from same circumstances or situation, again, not as a comparison, but as a proof point, that other people have achieved similar or done things. I think that we need to try and build the belief that we're capable. And I think there's a lot to be said for building belief that we're capable. Is it possible? Could I do it? And I think people are too quick to, count themselves out of things.
Is the dominant thought ideally the big dream?
It's a big question, isn't it? I think that
because that is your imagination, the dream.
Yeah, I think that I think we need to lose ourselves to something which is bigger than us. So so many things get in the way: ego, self-esteem, self-image, and what my friends think of me, all that sort of stuff. And I think that and this is the thing, actually, isn't it? When people become dads or mums, you lose yourself to something which is bigger than you, don't you? You give your life, for something which is more meaningful, and whether it's a political cause, whether it's a family, whether it's a dream, and if we can find something which is bigger than us and devote our lives to it, we start to, direct our energy in a particular way, which allows us to, overcome those objections and barriers on the way, as well as, direct our true self towards it. Most successful people I've ever worked with, and I'm talking about people who get to number one in the world, proper number one in the world, the best golfer or, best tennis player or whatever they might be, and they're incredibly purposeful. So, and purpose is a reason for being. So it's a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And this is my thing about purpose never being achieved. It's attained on a daily basis. So, why Warren Buffett keeps working and Tiger Woods keeps working, purpose is never achieved. So, so let's take that back, to us, mere mortals. And, every day we see on our TVs, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But the fact they're ordinary people who are just purposeful, directing their energy towards, a very narrow focus. And I think that once we start to understand what's important to us and direct our energy towards it, then I think that we can, achieve some extraordinary stuff.
For the listeners that believe they've got the purpose or found the purpose, there's some good advice that you've already given. Let it show up every day and let it wake you up in the morning with a smile on your face and a skip in your stride and etc. So bring it every day. But what about the people that haven't got the purpose or they're questioning that? I mean, where did they start?
It's a really tricky one, actually. I was unhappy for a number of years because one of the things that all these self-help books talk about and say you've got to find your purpose. And I thought I haven't got any purpose. I don't really know what I want to do, to be honest. So
honestly, you've had that?
I had it until my mid-30s. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So 3 years ago. So rude. You're rude that you laughed at that.
Yeah.
So, sorry. So, no, my mid-30s, I was, I had no direction, no interest in anything, no, nothing. And I think that life is about timing. I wish that I could say that, here's a gimmick, here's a tip, here's a technique that will help you find your purpose. I wish I could say that, but there isn't. And I think that the only thing that we can do is to explore and experiment. So the only thing you can do is it's almost like looking for the keys. You can't focus too intently on it. You almost need to just involve yourself in a variety of things, and something will make sense at some stage. So, on a personal note, and I never had any ambition to do anything. I drifted from one thing to another for a number of years, and then in my 30s I became homeless. I don't know if you know this or not, but I was like a year of living on a building site in Nottingham. There's no money, no job, nothing. In my mid-30s, and then my mum died, and then and I suddenly became aware of that mortality. I thought, God, I'm in my mid-30s and got nothing. But, what shall I do? And I decided to chase my passion more than my pension. I'd been in a variety of corporate roles which I hated and got sacked from. I was no good at them. And I thought that, the only thing I'm interested in is actually psychology. The only thing I actually like, is psychology. So I decided to do psychology. I got no idea what that looked like at that time. I studied business and marketing, and so I had no qualifications in psychology at that stage. And then I thought it's the only thing I'm interested in. And then from that moment on, I had huge amounts of luck. I met people, who I'd say yes to everything. And I met people who indulged me into my passion for psychology. I read lots, I got involved in lots. I took it upon myself, to head out into the world, with a view that, my whatever I do will be something involved in mindsets and attitudes, and then from that moment on, whenever it was, 15 years ago, longer actually, I sort of found my way into what I do now. But the happiest I've ever been, the most successful I've ever been, is doing something I want to do, which is psychology. So my purpose was never found by a framework or a model or a book. It was found by timing. That I'd hit rock bottom and decided that I needed to do something else, but I got no idea what. So the more I involved myself in, the more I met people and got involved in a variety of things, the more I kissed a lot of frogs and thought, this is the one that's interests me.
But rock bottom's a good place. And you said, because you decided, it's a decision, isn't it? It's almost like a defining moment in someone's life.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of our best decisions aren't made from a comfort zone, are they? I think that redundancy is a great enabler. I've met so many people who have been made redundant, or been sacked, or got ill, and they've eventually, after a period of time, said that life has actually been better. Life has started living, and because I've diagnosed with this terrible thing, or I lost a friendship group, whatever it is, something life changing has happened, which is potentially negative. But their attitude towards it has enabled them to fulfill their potential.
Got some, I want to say quick questions. I don't know how quick they're going to be, but what's the hardest lesson you've had to learn in life?
I think the hardest lesson has been, our hardest lesson has been life is about timing. I think it's the hardest lesson. I think
Is that patience?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that patience and belief. I think that, the amount of frustration I've had and the amount of unhappiness I've had because I haven't had what I wanted now. And I think that
Which so many people are relating to that point right now.
Oh, really?
As you're speaking right
you
now.
think?
Yeah.
I think
100%.
we are always searching for this thing that's going to bring us more money, more happiness, more love, more recognition, and you think that I need to try really hard, I need to run faster, I need to do more. And so the hardest lesson I've ever learned is that's not the case, because the amount of times I have tried harder, the amount of times I have worked more, and it's never really brought me any of that. And it's at the time and the lights being right. It's an alignment of stars, which you can't necessarily make happen.
What's the most beautiful thing in performance psychology?
Allowing people to realise their potential. That's when people get it. So if you can create new perspectives for people, and people say, you know what, I've got a new view on this, and so therefore there's some new possibilities, new opportunities. It's amazing. It's incredible. So if you can give people a new set of eyes, so they see the same evidence differently, and then and I honestly, it's groundbreaking when you take someone from number 5 in the world to number 1 in the world. It's actually not that. It doesn't mean that much, because they're bloody good. They're really, really good. So for number 3 in the world, number 5 in the world to number 1 in the world, no big deal. You take someone who's 500th in the world and losing their job, really worried about their careers, about how they're going to pay the mortgage, and they get to 300th in the world, manage to put the kids through school, manage to pay the mortgage, get another 5 years out of their career. It's amazing. So when people achieve their potential to a particular degree, it's not based upon world ranking or what tournaments they win or what trophies they win. It's them changing their life because of a viewpoint that they've now got from working with you.
What's the best gift anyone can give anyone else?
It's the bottle of Macallan.
It is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what? JFK. So JFK was had chronic back issues. A lot of people don't realise that. Right. So he was on painkillers most of his adult life. But if you watch him speak, there is no place he would rather be than speaking to that audience, and that's why he was a brilliant speech maker. Brilliant.
Do you know he didn't get a salary either? He didn't get paid.
No, that's right. Yeah. So
he did it for.
Yeah, and I think that I think if you treat everyone like they're the most important person you would meet that week, I think they'd give you anything. They'd give you their business. They would give you their friendship. Because what do we all want as human beings? I want to be listened to. I want to be engaged with. I want my needs to be met. And I want to be acknowledged. So I think that treating everyone like they're the most important person you're going to meet that week. I think it's a really important gift. To as Covey put it, seek to understand before you're understood. We're too keen to satisfy our own needs. I think if you help enough people get what they want, you in turn get what you want. And so create as much value as you can for others to be valued.
There was a professor of emotional intelligence, and he said, loads of people have said this, everyone you meet have got 2 unmet needs at any given time. They need to be understood and they need to be admired.
Okay.
And kind of made me feel like that of JFK, as you say. And I asked another lady this, NLP neuroscientist, Dr. Linda Shaw, and she said the best gift is to make people feel significant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which encompasses exactly what you've said in a slightly different way.
Yeah, absolutely. We all want to feel like we have a circle of influence. We want to feel like we have meaning, and can contribute. And that's why it's so important. See people in meetings who will dominate a meeting where, one, we live in a world now where anyone can contribute and genuinely build value, but it's incredibly important for people to feel like they can contribute. High psychological safety, high diversity.
Now that we've had this interview, what should the headline be?
Headline should be, if you want me to do podcasts, bring me a bottle of Macallan.
I better bring him a bottle of Macallan next time, hadn't I?
The headline should be, I think, and I genuinely believe everyone can be better. Whatever you dream, whatever you want to achieve, it isn't circumstance and situation. It's about choice. And I think responsibility. No one has ever wandered around the bottom of a mountain and then simply found themselves at the top. If you genuinely want to achieve anything more than what you're achieving at the moment, it's about making a choice, taking the responsibility, having the ownership, to create a mindset and attitude which allows you to move from where you are to where you want to be. And I think here's the good news is that there's an abundance of books and programs and people, who are willing to help. And I think that for us to connect in new and different ways, is probably where it's at. So, if you want to be better as an estate agent, if you want to be better as a lawyer, better as a golfer, there's absolutely people can help. There's books that can help. There's, the internet can help. I remember speaking to a friend of mine, Paul Zenon, who is a magician. And he said that when he learnt magic, he used to walk 5 miles to a library in, I can't remember, Stockport or Southport. But he'd walk 5 miles and just hope that one book on magic was in there. So, and if it was, he could learn some tricks for a week. Whereas now you can Google what the best magicians in the world do. So I think there has never been such an abundance of information, knowledge, insight, and people who are willing to give their time and expertise to allow everyone to be better. So it's just a matter of creating those networks, creating that environment, which will allow you to succeed.
Yeah, like you mentioned the word choice, and I thought this earlier on, so I'm just going to... I think the quote from Viktor Frankl went something like this: between stimulus and response there's a space. Yeah. And in that space lies magic.
Yeah.
It's your choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you painted the picture of, walking around the bottom of the mountain, at some point you're going to have to choose to act. Yeah. Because no one's got to the top without taking action.
I think the good news is that whenever there's an action, there's a reaction. So the key is to do something, and I think that
according to more scientists,
yeah. And I think that I think those who experiment the most will win. I think it's true. Be it for businesses, be it for people. So we need to create a culture, where people can fail. It doesn't make them failures. People make mistakes. Doesn't make them a mistake. And if we detach the action from the person, we get the best learning opportunity. Sports people know really well that failure is part payment towards success. The price of success is always paid in full and in advance. You don't get the number one in the world and start losing tournaments. Don't work like that. And the best sports people I've worked with, the people who get the number one in the world, are the ones who learn to lose. So, if you learn to lose, and then it's the best way of learning to win. And, lose well. And what I mean by that is that, you finish second, or ever you finish, and you think about what could I have done better, and what did I do well. And you start to assess these, success and failure as equal outcomes, which allow us to equally evaluate what we could do to become better. They shouldn't become attitudes. They're simply outcomes which allow us to assess what we need to do more. And this is why I always say the price of success is always paid in full and in advance. You don't get to be successful, straight away. You have to experience a lot of failure to do so. You almost say now that you need to double your rate of failure, if you want to accelerate your route to success.
Such a good quote, that. I mean, that's your quote, yeah?
I might have stolen it. I can't remember, to be honest.
That might be
I never know. I probably stole it from you, to be honest.
That might be a good title for this as well. My favourite part of all of this, besides spending time with one of the greats, and getting the listeners to spend time with one of the greats. Genuinely, there's very few people on the planet that can communicate like you do on this subject.
That's very kind, thank you.
As blasé as you make it sometimes. It's all an act. Don't get sucked in, folks. My favourite part has been the imagination, actually.
Right.
I think you've got everybody's imagination flowing. What's been your favourite part?
My favourite part, chatting to you. It's just, we're very much on the same page, in regard to thinking. And I think sometimes you talk to people about mindset and attitude, and they fold their arms, and say, "Yeah, no, I know what you mean, but." It's about an increased budget. It's an increase. It's markets aren't great at the moment. It's about the economy. I know what you're saying, but it's about the economy. But it's lovely having conversations, with people who understand that, a new level of open-mindedness is what's needed to be successful. And it's a bit of a takeaway actually for people who are, listening to this, that surround yourself with some people who think the same, in regard to. It's about an attitude and mindset which will allow you to perform well in the future. So if you've got some people with you who, understand the power of being able to think differently, the power of choice, who are taking responsibility for their own success, you surround yourself with some winners who create other winners, as Covey would have put it. It's a really powerful thing. And so I don't mean surround yourself with people who think the same. It's more about people who have an open-mindedness towards how we can deliver success in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, give him a hand, folks. Jamil Qureshi,
thank you very much. Thank you.